Why do WE always need to pet everything? Bono Berkesel, Germany, 14,000 years ago. A grave, a man, a woman, and the dog. The dog was placed carefully between them, not thrown in, not an afterthought, positioned, deliberately. Its bones told a story nobody expected. In the final months of its life, the dog had suffered from canine distemper, a disease that causes seizures, partial blindness, progressive paralysis. In that condition, it couldn't hunt, couldn't guard Emrove, couldn't do anything useful by any practical measure, but someone had kept it alive anyway, fed it, cared for it through weeks of deterioration, and when it finally died, buried it alongside the people it had lived with 14,000 years ago, before agriculture, before writing, before nearly everything we call civilization. Someone did exactly what you would do. The question isn't why, the question is how we got here, and who chose whom first, because the story most people tell about dogs and humans gets the direction wrong. We didn't domesticate the dog. The dog came to us, and what happened next changed both species in ways neither could have managed alone. Somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, certain wolves began following human groups, not to attack, to scavenge, to eat what was left behind. The wolves least afraid of humans got closest, got the most food, survived better, bred more. Their offspring inherited that tolerance, slightly lower fear threshold, slightly more comfort with human presence. Nobody trained them. Nobody selected them deliberately. Selection pressure did it automatically. The friendlier wolf ate. The fearful wolf didn't. Geneticist Adam Boyko at Cornell confirmed in 2017 that dogs didn't emerge from one domestication event that then spread globally. They appeared independently, wherever humans settled long enough. Multiple locations. Same process. Same result, which means this wasn't a human invention. It was a convergence. The wolves that could tolerate us found a reliable food source. The humans who didn't drive them away gained an early warning system, a hunting partner, a source of warmth on cold nights. Neither species sat down and made a decision. They just kept showing up near each other until one day, someone looked at a wolf pup, oversized head, oversized eyes, clumsy movements, and picked it up. And the second story began. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasaki at Asabu University in Japan measured oxytocin levels in both humans and dogs during neutral eye contact. Oxytocin, the same hormone that releases when a mother looks at her newborn, when two people who trust each other embrace. The hormone that creates the felt sense of attachment. The results came back unexpected enough that the team ran the experiment multiple times. When humans gazed into their dog's eyes, oxytocin rose in the human. When dogs gazed into their owner's eyes, oxytocin rose in the dog. Simultaneously, the same hormone. In two different species, this is the only documented oxytocin loop between members of different species in the scientific literature. The same neuromechanism humans use to bond with their children, activated by a dog looking at them, and the dog experiencing something chemically indistinguishable from what it feels to be loved. This didn't happen by accident. Over 15,000 years, both species co-evolved toward this response. Dogs that were better at triggering human attachment survived better. Humans whose attachment systems responded to dogs formed more effective partnerships. The loop got stronger with every generation, until it became what it is now, something neither species can easily undo. Dogs weren't the only ones. Every hunter-gatherer group ever documented kept animals, not domesticated livestock, wild animals. Monkeys, birds, deer, fawns, wild boar piglets caught young, brought back to camp, fed, named, slept alongside. Anthropologist John Bradshaw spent decades documenting this pattern across cultures. The most striking detail wasn't that they kept the animals, it was that they usually didn't eat them. Not because food was plentiful. In most cases it wasn't, but once an animal had a name, once it had been held and fed and had slept in the same space, it stopped being food, it became something else. Something the group's social software had filed under a different category entirely. The Amazonian people kept tapirs. Full-grown tapirs weigh 200 kilograms. By every practical measure, a tapir is an enormous amount of food. They didn't eat them. The Hadza kept birds. The Kung kept small animals, brought them into their shelters, gave them names. In a world where every calorie mattered, they consistently chose not to eat the ones that had been touched enough times. That's not logic. That's what happens when a brain built for connection meets something small and alive and in need of care. Biologist E.O. Wilson spent decades building a theory around a deceptively simple observation. He called it biophilia, the innate human tendency to be drawn toward living things, not learned, not cultural. Hardwired, built into the human brain over hundreds of thousands of years of living inside natural environments. The hunter-gatherer brain was built to track movement, recognize patterns in animal behavior, distinguish threat from safety at a glance. That system doesn't switch off when it's no longer needed. It's still running. It's why people name their cars, why they apologize after bumping into furniture, why they see faces in wood grain and clouds, why a few moving dots on a screen immediately get assigned personalities. The brain cannot help looking for life. For hundreds of thousands of years, over-detecting it was always safer than missing it. And when that brain encounters an actual living creature, something warm, moving, responsive, it doesn't need a reason. It reacts. The urge to reach out and touch isn't a distraction from something more important. It's one of the oldest systems in your head doing exactly what it was built to do. Go back to Bono Berkesel, the sick dog, the grave. The two people who chose to spend their resources keeping it alive when it couldn't give them anything practical in return. There's no clear evolutionary explanation for that choice, no documented survival advantage, just a brain that had been touched enough times, had looked into those eyes enough times, and filed the animal somewhere it couldn't easily undo. The urge to pet everything you encounter isn't a quirk. It isn't weakness. It isn't distraction from something more serious. It's the trace of a 15,000-year relationship that neither species designed, neither species fully controls, and neither species has managed to walk away from. Dogs chose us first. They showed up at the edge of our fires and waited to see if we'd drive them away. We didn't. And in the time since, both species changed. Dogs evolved eyes that trigger our attachment systems. We evolved attachment systems that respond to them. The oxytocin loop got deeper with every generation until it became something that feels, from the inside, exactly like love. Because it is. Not metaphorically, chemically, neurologically, in every measurable way that the word has ever meant anything. You look at a dog and feel something real. The dog looks back and feels something real. 14,000 years ago, someone buried a sick dog between two people it had lived with. Nobody needed to explain why. They still don't.